I didn't say a word when the HOA president screamed about trespassing. I just slid the original builder's survey across the polished mahogany table and leaned back in my chair. Their lawyer stopped mid-sentence, went pale, and pushed. His glasses up his nose as though maybe the document would blur into something else if he stared hard enough. It didn't. The signature was right. They're county certified, dated. Notarized proof that the porch they claimed wasn't mine had been laid on my lot 48 years ago, long before their little committee of suburban tyrants ever dreamed of forming. The room went silent. They had been barking at me for months, but now they had nothing. And that silence, that quiet collapse of their authority, was better than any shouting match I could have ever given them. But let me back up. I hadn't come to this neighborhood looking for a fight. It's quite the opposite. I moved out here to get away from all that. After 30 years of working in city planning and surveying contracts, long hours buried in plats, right-of-way maps, easements, I was ready to retire into something simpler. My grandfather had left behind a small cabin on the edge of the subdivision, and though it was old, drafty, and in need of repair, it was mine. It had a porch where I could sit with a mug of coffee, watching the sun climb over the pines. A small garden where I planted tomatoes just because I liked the smell of the vines on summer mornings. I wasn't chasing prestige or trying to outdo the neighbors with fancy landscaping. I wanted peace. Quiet enough to read. Space enough to breathe. That's all. And for the first few months, that's exactly what I had. I'd fix boards on the porch, patch leaks in the roof, and in the evenings, I'd cast a line into the creek that ran behind the house. Sometimes kids rode bikes past and waved. Sometimes an older couple walked their dog along the gravel lane. It was uneventful in the best way. I wasn't interested in who was president of what committee or what rules they were inventing in their bylaws. Truth be told, I thought all that HOA business was mostly background noise, something that didn't have much to do with me. Until one morning I stepped outside and found a neon-orange notice taped to my porch railing. Trespassing on common property, it read in block capitals. Like I had been caught sneaking into someone else's land. Stood there reading it over 3 times, trying to figure out if it was a prank. But it wasn't. It had the HOA seal on top, their letterhead. The ridiculous signature line at the bottom with the president's name printed neatly under it. I was being warned for sitting on my own porch, as though the boards my grandfather nailed down in 1977 somehow belonged to the association. I laughed out loud at the absurdity, but it didn't feel funny. It felt like someone had wandered into my kitchen, pointed at the fridge, and announced it was theirs. At first I tried diplomacy. I wrote back politely, pointing out that my deed clearly described my lot boundaries and the porch sat squarely inside them. I offered to meet, to show them my title and the county tax maps. I figured this was a clerical mix-up. Surely they had better things to do than claim my front steps. Their reply? Second notice, this time with a fine attached, $200. Continuing violations will result in escalating penalties. It read, bold and underlined. When I called their office, the manager chuckled like I was wasting his time. At the next board meeting, when I tried to explain, they cut me off and told me to stop being difficult. That's when I realized it wasn't a mistake. It was a game, and they expected me to fold. The neighbors noticed too. People who used to wave when I mowed the lawn suddenly crossed the street. Whispers floated, the guy fighting the HOA. The troublemaker on the edge lot. It's strange how quickly silence can surround you. My daughter stopped bringing the grandkids over because she didn't want them to see the nasty letters piling in the mailbox. My partner started asking if it was worth it, if maybe we should just comply and tear the porch off to keep the peace. But I knew better. I'd spent my career reading boundaries and easements, watching how powerful entities pushed the small guy around until he broke. And I wasn't going to break, so I shifted gears. I stopped sending emails into the void and started pulling records. I went down to the county clerk's office, where old survey maps are still stored on microfilm reels that smell like vinegar and dust. I requested the subdivision plat from 1972, the very one filed when the developer carved these lots out of my grandfather's farmland. And there it was, Lot 11, clear as day, boundaries drawn with meets and bounds. In a neat rectangle sketched on the northeast corner marked porch existing. My grandfather had it surveyed and built before any HOA covenants even existed. Their so-called common property was a phantom, invented years after the fact. I didn't stop there. I had the county surveyor certify a copy of the plat, complete with seals. Pulled the deed from the registry, the one transferring the property from my grandfather to me, showing continuity of title without interruption. I even got photos from the Historical Society archives, black hand-white snapshots of the cabin with my grandfather sitting on that same porch. Long before half the board members were even born. And while I gathered evidence, I documented every notice, every fine, every snide remark from the board. I kept a ledger, dates, times, exact wording. They thought they were wearing me down. In reality, they were building my case. When the next hearing came, the one where they threatened to escalate fines to Lens, I walked in calm. I didn't raise my voice. I let them rant. The president barked about unauthorized structures, waving her hands like she was conducting an orchestra of indignation. That's when I slid the survey across the table. The certified copy. The original builder's mark. Their lawyer leaned forward. His pen froze, and then his face drained of color. He knew what it meant. Without that porch being common property, they had no claim. No leverage, no fines. Nothing. It was as if the floor had been yanked out. From under them, the president stammered, tried to bluff, but the lawyer shook his head subtly, signaling the game was up. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. The silence did the work for me. You could feel the authority shift in the room, the way a dog lowers its hackles when it realizes the other dog isn't backing down. After that, everything unraveled for them. The fines were quietly withdrawn. The trespassing letters stopped. At the next election, the president stepped down, citing personal reasons. 2 board members resigned outright. Word spread around the neighborhood that maybe the HOA wasn't as ironclad as it pretended to be. Neighbors who had avoided me started nodding again. Some even apologized softly, as though they hadn't been complicit in their silence. And me? I went back to my porch. I fixed the railing where the notice had torn the paint. I planted new tomato seedlings in the garden. Sat in the evenings with a book, listening to the creek. Now when I drive through, some wave, some turn away. Either way, it's quiet. And that's all I ever wanted.